All right, so today I want to talk about this story out of the post-millennial. Now, Justin Trudeau was in Africa recently doing a bunch of things, trying to keep the UN Security Council seat, which is another video in and of itself, which I think is kind of stupid. But the other thing he was doing was basically, as usual, giving away a bunch of Canadian taxpayer dollars that the overwhelming majority of people, I would guess, would not want to be leaving Canada. I mean, I don't understand how you would have any reason to support this kind of stuff because Canada is kind of suffering right now, and we're throwing away a bunch of money in foreign countries for things that don't really need to have spent or spend any money on, basically. But anyway, this is out of out of True North, or sorry, the post millennial. Sorry, Trudeau willing to boost oil and gas in Africa while Canadian industry suffers. Now, one of the big hotly contested issues out there right now is the tech mine in Alberta that the Liberal government's more than likely going to reject. And their solution to it is, oh, we'll just pay him off a little. But the problem with that is that that's more of a one-time thing. And I mean, even if it isn't a one-time thing, it's still not as good. Now, the company that wants to, I mean, they want to invest $20 billion, I believe it is, in Alberta, which is going to create jobs, which is again it's a lot of money to invest in Alberta. And the Liberal government is probably not going to approve it. I haven't heard whether or not they've approved it yet or not, but maybe by the time I put this out, it will be approved or disapproved. Like I say, my guess is disapproved. But it just goes to show more and more of the Trudeau government and the East's hate for the West, namely Alberta and Saskatchewan. And it's a lot of people think of it as more of an East versus West thing. It's more of a liberal versus conservative or right versus left. Like that's what it really should be called. I'm not sure why people paint it out to be, and I mean I understand why, but it should be painted out more to be a left versus right thing, and that's something that people definitely should be talking about more. But the whole point of this video being, why are we giving away so much money to foreign countries that aren't going to use it for anything? Like in these countries, women don't have rights. Like Justin Trudeau wants to, it's just wasting money. Like I don't understand the argument for it. And if you're someone who's like, oh, these people do need money, they're suffering and all this, well, go ahead, donate money then. Like, go ahead, donate money, because that's the thing that really bothers me when you have these political debates is that the people whose positions is always like, we got to help the poor, and that's why we need the free stuff and the welfare. Those are the kind of people that they don't volunteer any time working with poor people or at charities. They don't give any money away. They're just virtue signaling, for lack of a better word, a-holes that know that, I mean, they're moral and smart enough to know that poor people need help, but they don't have the balls and the ethics and the slightest bit of conviction to say, hey, if we were going to help people, we shouldn't be forcing people to help other people, basically. Because in a rational society, that's the only way to run things too. Because if you're forcing people, then there's no morals and ethics behind it, right? Like if you're stealing someone's credit card to go buy poor people food, is that a moral thing to do? Like, no, it isn't. So it makes no sense. And that's kind of the Trudeau government is, I mean, the amount of hypocrisy going on is, it's absolutely astounding. But I don't, like I said, that's you could make multiple videos on that kind of stuff. But like I say, this just goes to show more and more the hatred of the West, more or less the free market and the right. Like I say, that's what it should be called. And the problem, and a lot of people are wondering, well, why would they have such hatred for it? What motivation do they have? That's a question I hear a decent amount. Now, when you're on the left, you don't view yourself as being able to compete in a free market. That's why you support leftist policies the overwhelming majority of the time, right? Because if you viewed yourself as being able to get by in a free market, well, why would you want a massive welfare state, which is less money in your pocket? It makes no sense from a logical perspective. So if you're on the left, obviously there's exceptions to the rule, but you're most likely someone who is poor, not because of corruption or the mean evil corporations, because you're probably less intelligent, you're probably you don't work a high paying job, and because in case something happens to your health or you lose your job, you need a welfare state and you need free health care, because if you don't, you're probably screwed. Now, the ethics behind that's a completely different thing, but the that's the main difference. When you're on the right, it's the opposite. You view yourself as being able to compete in a free market, because if there's a massive welfare state, then that means you're going to be taxed up the you know what to pay for that, and you're not going to receive nearly as much as you put in as you take, or sorry, the other way around. You take out as you put in. So that's kind of the difference, and that it has to be like that for it to operate, right? But that's kind of the some things of things. But basically, like I say, this kind of stuff it's getting really old, and like I say, I don't know when I always mention too. I mean, yeah, it says here 7,000 jobs could be created. Like, it's such a no-brainer that it makes absolutely no sense that if a program like this was to be proposed, maybe not the exact same industry, but in Quebec or Ontario, I would bet a lot of money that it would happen. Like, they would put it through, no questions asked. And that's kind of that's what's going on. And the like I was getting at too, the reason why they don't want this kind of stuff to be put through, the reason why they desperately don't want the West to succeed, namely Alberta and Saskatchewan, is because we're more of a free market provinces at least. And when you're on the left, you desperately cannot have examples of your, I mean, not as if there isn't enough already. I mean, you look at all the socialist and communist countries, but you desperately cannot have examples of your crappy ideology not working out. And like I say, that the if they were to give Alberta these jobs and they were to not have massive amounts of crippling regulations, well, that's what would happen, because the free market would succeed. Wages in Alberta would be through the roof like they were at one point. Unemployment would be low, and people would be like, hey, Alberta's doing really good. It's probably because they have a massive amount of free market, jobs in private sector, and they're a conservative province. Here we are with our massive amounts of regulations and taxes, and we're not doing any good. So that's kind of the whole story behind that. But basically, to take home point, what is Justin Trudeau doing? Like, we're struggling mightily in Canada, namely in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and yet he's spending money like a drunken sailor in foreign countries that I don't see how anyone can argue that that money is being put to good use there, and it makes no sense. But anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal that I've linked in the description. You can donate there. I'd really appreciate that, and stay tuned for more.